to change aircraft makers is a big deal for
Big
an
deal.
airline. But we've gotten to a moment now where there's so much. There's a lot of bad news. There's a lot of questioning about the quality of Boeing's equipment right now, that it comes at a particularly bad time for Boeing, simply because a lot of people are starting to think, a lot of airlines are starting to think about the next generation of aircraft. And a lot of people say, well, things are happening now. Everybody's going to jump and run to Boeing. Run away from Boeing. It's very difficult to do, simply because, as you said, your crews are trained on that. You've made these multi-billion-dollar investments. But what's at stake here is the next generation of planes. What happens is that, because in the airline business you can use a piece of aircraft for decades, you don't make these decisions to change lightly. So instead, it's time to think about the next generation. And so what Airbus is doing now is they're going to have some room to go ahead and say, I'm going to come up with a new plane at a time when Boeing is so, sort of troubled and so consumed with thinking about how can it deal with its quality problems, how can it also deal with its balance sheet problems. I mean, Boeing is in the point right now where it doesn't have a lot of financial flexibility to build a new plane. And so Airbus, however, is probably about a $50 billion advantage over it from a debt standpoint. And so they can move ahead and start planning for the next generation and sort of seal this dominance that they're probably going to have of the aircraft business.
Jim, tell us how fortunes can change. And I love how the story starts. And you guys go back to 1987. If we can all remember back then, it's a while away. But talk about what happened and how that maybe set the stage for where Airbus is today.
Yeah, I mean, what happened is a lot of people thought, when Airbus decided to bring out its A320 narrow-body airliner, the people thought, oh, how are we going to do that? I mean, we've got the 737. The 737 rules the skies, and they come out with this A320. They have a great party. They have, sort of Prince Charles at that time, Lady Diana. I mean, it's big deal. Fireworks and everything, and everybody says, that's not going anywhere. You cannot beat them. And at that time, Boeing had 10 times as many 737s popping out than A320s. Fast forward to today, and the A320 has become the best-selling commercial aircraft of all time. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a big deal, given that Boeing had commanded that market for so long, and the 737 has been a major player in aircraft for almost a half century.
How much of that is the mistakes and problems that Boeing has had? How much of it is it just folks started to kind of really like the A320 and shift their ordering book?
A lot of it is that the A320 just sort of came in with a lot of innovations that, customers connected with. What they call fly-by-wire, the sort of joystick, sort of all-electronic cockpit, the idea that it was a slightly larger plane, mm-hmm. which then set off this whole thing of continually making these planes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
I measure how big my seat is. I don't know about you guys, but I do.
It turned out that they were in the right place at the right time, mm-hmm. but they were also extremely, because they didn't have an older model that they were basically just retrofitting, they could think differently. They sort of took it and they ran with it, and now they're in a position to think about the next generation of airplanes that can, fly on sustainable fuel, that can do all sorts of, sort of electronic things in the cockpit, but also can take structures of airliners in a different way. They're planning a plane now for this next generation that has a wing that's shaped like a bird's wing, that can actually change its shape in flight. And also, because airports weren't built for these new giant planes that we're building now, they're going to have aircraft with the wingtips that fold up, so you can still put it in the same place, but and then when you pull it away from the onto the tarmac, flip the wings out. They are basically taking advantage of what they have right now, which is a lot of money, right, as well as not the look of all the stock market saying, oh my God, you're a terrible company, which is what Boeing has to deal with right now.